I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion.
Whoa! That quote from the documentary we're looking at today kind of sums up why we're doing this whole deep dive, don't you think?
Totally.
Today we're going deep on Alexander the Great.
Yep.
You know, like his rise to power.
The empire.
The empire, yeah, his legacy.
All that good stuff.
The whole shebang.
Exactly.
So if you've ever wondered about this guy, one of history's like biggest hitters,
Oh, yeah.
then you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
Get ready for some epic battles, some insights into ancient culture, and who knows, maybe even a few surprises along the way.
Oh, I think there will be.
So Alexander's early life, right? Like he wasn't just some average kid.
No, not at all.
He claimed descent from Hercules, like the Hercules
Oh, yeah.
and Achilles.
Wow, what a combo.
Right. Like talk about pressure.
Seriously, can you imagine being that kid? Like, were people just waiting for him to start conquering stuff from day one?
I know, right? So it wasn't just like family bragging rights.
Oh, no, no, no. This lineage thing, it like fed into that whole divine right idea.
Exactly.
You know, like rulers being chosen by the gods.
It's like ingrained power, right? You're not just a king, you're practically a god yourself.
Whoa, heavy stuff.
Right.
But okay, on top of that, he's tutored by Aristotle.
Oh, yeah, that's a big word.
That's not your average tutor.
Not at all. I mean, think about the impact Aristotle had on philosophy, science, everything.
Seriously. So how do you think that relationship, like with Aristotle, how did that shape Alexander?
I mean, Aristotle wasn't just teaching him facts, you know, it was like a mental training program.
Yeah.
Honing his strategic thinking, instilling this deep curiosity. And this is key for a future emperor, a real appreciation for different cultures.
Okay, so we've got a prince, like primed for greatness, right?
Right.
But did he actually have the skills? Like the documentary mentioned his first military victory at 16.
16.
16.
What was that?
That just dumb luck? Or was there something more to it?
Okay, 16 is young, I'll give you that. But this wasn't some small-time victory. He crushed a Thracian rebellion. That takes serious strategic thinking, especially under pressure.
Yeah, true.
I mean, he was putting those lessons from Aristotle to work, and I guess it paid off.
It's pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the Battle of Chaeronea. Still a teenager, but pivotal in that Macedonian victory.
Yeah.
Why is this battle so important?
It's not just that they won, it's how they won. It solidified Macedonian dominance over Greece. But what really stands out is Alexander, even as like a junior officer, showing this incredible tactical brilliance.
So the seeds of greatness were already there.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into empire building.
All right, let's do it.
The Persian Empire, right.
Mhm.
Like, we all know those big names, Granicus, Aetius, Gaugamela, these massive battles.
Cute.
But what's the real takeaway from this period of nonstop conquest? What should we be focusing on?
Well, think about the sheer scale of it all. The Persian Empire was massive, wealthy, centuries of military tradition. Alexander conquered it in a shockingly short amount of time.
That's insane.
It is insane. This wasn't just luck. This was strategic genius. This guy was on another level.
And he didn't just destroy things he built too, right?
Right.
Like he founded over 70 cities.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It wasn't just about leaving his mark everywhere. It was about spreading Greek culture.
Really?
Yeah. Language, government systems. He was basically laying the groundwork for the whole Hellenistic world.
Like that fusion of East and West.
Exactly. And think about Alexandria in Egypt. It became this major center of learning and culture, a real testament to his vision.
So he was thinking long term.
Definitely.
But he wasn't just about forcing Greek culture on everyone, right?
Yeah.
The documentary talked about how he actually incorporated Persian customs into his rule, even marrying a Persian noblewoman. Why would he do that?
Well, it was a bold move, that's for sure. Super radical for the time. But it suggests that Alexander wasn't just building an empire. He was trying to create this new world order, one that blended cultures. Like a vision of unity, you know?
It's pretty forward thinking.
Oh, yeah, way ahead of his time. But imagine trying to convince his Macedonian troops of that.
Yeah, I bet that went over well.
You know, friction, resistance, the whole 9 yards. It shows that even a leader as successful as Alexander had limits.
So even he couldn't just force change on everyone.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, like, what was really driving him? The documentary mentioned how he believed he was descended from Zeus Ammon.
Oh, wow.
Did he really believe that, or was it just a power play?
Honestly, it's hard to say for sure. Throughout history, leaders claiming divine lineage, it's a way to justify their actions, right? To solidify their authority.
Right.
But it also speaks to Alexander's personal ambition. He didn't just want to rule, he felt like he was destined to rule.
And that vision of a unified world, the blending of East and West, it laid the groundwork for the Hellenistic era, right? And that gave us so much. Art, philosophy, science.
It's incredible to think about, right? His conquests had this ripple effect shaping Western thought and culture for centuries.
Wow. Okay, now I'm seeing why his story still matters. He wasn't just about winning battles, he was changing the course of history.
Absolutely.
So next up, we'll dive into his final years, the push eastward, and ultimately the legacy he left behind. Stay with us.
It's going to be good. It's kind of crazy to think, what if Alexander had lived longer?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, what if he'd focused on, like, solidifying his empire instead of, pushing east?
Yeah, that's what makes his final years so interesting to me.
Totally.
So the documentary talks about him going into India.
Yeah.
Which for the Greeks was like this land shrouded in myth and mystery.
Totally unknown territory.
Right. So what was driving him to keep expanding? Was it just pure ambition?
I mean, ambition definitely played a part, right? But also maybe just this sense of restlessness,
Restlessness.
Yeah, like he'd already conquered Persia, achieved what everyone thought was impossible.
Right.
So maybe he needed a new challenge.
To prove himself.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe there was this genuine desire to, like, understand these cultures on the fringes of the known world.
That's a good question.
It's one historians are still debating,
And he didn't just waltz into India, right?
No.
Like the Battle of the Hydaspes River, that sounds intense.
Oh, yeah, the Hydaspes was a whole other ballgame.
What do you mean?
It wasn't just about winning or losing a battle.
Oh.
It pushed Alexander and his army to their absolute limits.
So what happened there?
I mean, his army was exhausted, homesick. They'd been fighting for years.
Yeah.
And then they run into this enemy unlike any they'd seen before,
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, war elephants. Crazy tactics they weren't prepared for at all.
Wow.
So it was a brutal battle, a real turning point for Alexander and his army.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
So was this the moment where, things started to fall apart for him?
Well, the documentary talks about the mutiny at the Hyphasis River.
Oh, yeah.
That's where Alexander's troops, they finally put their foot down.
They refused to go any further.
They'd had enough.
Wow. To defy someone like Alexander.
Right? Especially for a guy who believed he was, like, divinely chosen.
Yeah. Talk about a power move.
Seriously. It shows you just how much pressure was building within the army, and maybe even for Alexander himself.
Yeah, and we often focus on Alexander's military genius, right?
Right.
But this moment of defiance, it's a totally different kind of leadership challenge.
It is.
Like, how do you respond when the people you're leading, they don't share your vision anymore?
Yeah, it makes you question, what made Alexander so successful in the first place, right?
So was it just his military brilliance, or was it something more?
Yeah, like, was he also a master motivator?
Someone who could inspire his troops?
Exactly, and what happens when that inspiration just runs dry?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alexander's forced to turn back.
Yep.
Heads back west.
And then dies in Babylon at 32.
32. The documentary mentions all these different theories about his death.
Yeah, poisoning, illness, maybe a combination of things. Who knows?
We may never know the truth.
Right, but the fact that we're still talking about it, thousands of years later,
Yeah.
it shows you just how captivating his story is.
He builds this huge empire only to die young.
Yeah.
Without a clear heir.
It's almost like a Greek tragedy, right?
It is.
It makes you wonder, was it inevitable that his empire would fall apart?
It kind of seems like it, right?
It's easy to see it that way.
Yeah.
But try to imagine holding together this massive, diverse empire back then, right?
No internet, no cars, no phones.
Exactly. Even the best leader would have struggled.
Okay, so maybe inevitable is too strong a word.
Maybe.
But his generals, the Diadochi, splitting up his empire.
Yeah, that definitely set the stage for a lot of conflict.
Centuries of power struggles.
Oh, yeah.
And it's important to remember that Alexander's empire wasn't just about, land and power.
Right.
It was about ideas, culture, the mixing of different ways of life.
And that process,
That fusion.
it continued even after his empire broke apart.
That takes us back to the Hellenistic world.
Exactly.
It wasn't just a footnote to Alexander's conquest.
No, not at all. It was a whole era defined by that cultural fusion that he started.
So the Hellenistic period, we're talking centuries of incredible art, philosophy, science, math.
Oh, yeah, and Alexandria, that city Alexander founded, it became a major center for all that.
It did.
Yeah.
The documentary mentioned the Library of Alexandria.
Oh, yes, one of the great wonders of the ancient world.
Wasn't it one of the largest libraries ever?
Oh, definitely. It was a symbol of the Hellenistic era's focus on learning and knowledge.
Like a global hub for scholars.
Exactly. Sharing ideas, translating texts, pushing the boundaries of what was known.
It's incredible
Isn't it?
to think about all that knowledge, all those stories in one place.
It's a testament to Alexander's vision of a more connected world.
And it's all because of him.
Yeah.
What a legacy to leave behind.
It's pretty amazing, right? Sometimes the most impactful things are the ones we don't even plan for.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we judge a leader's true significance, you know?
You can't just look at the battles.
No, exactly.
Okay, so far we've covered Alexander's youth, his conquests, his cultural impact.
A lot of ground.
But why does any of this matter to someone listening today?
That's the big question, right?
It is. Why should we care about some conqueror from over 2,000 years ago?
Well, for one thing, it's a story about ambition and genius, the limits of power.
And it's a human story.
Exactly, and that's what makes it timeless.
I like that it's not just dates and battles. It's about the choices people make, the consequences. You know, how we wrestle with power and legacy.
Yeah.
And there's something in there about how connected history really is.
Oh, yeah.
Alexander's actions had ripple effects that we're still feeling today.
Absolutely. We can see traces of the Hellenistic world in our art, our architecture, even our governments.
And it reminds us that the world we live in is the result of choices.
Made by individuals.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. Alexander's story is worth thinking about, but here's the big question. Was he a hero, a villain, or somewhere in between?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And there's no easy answer.
No.
He was a product of his time, you know, with all the good and the bad that comes with that.
Right.
He was brilliant and ruthless, ambitious, and maybe even a little bit idealistic.
And that's what makes history so interesting.
Totally.
It's not black and white.
It's messy.
It challenges us to think critically, to be okay with ambiguity, you know, to see the past as more than just good guys and bad guys.
Yeah, history is full of nuance.
It is.
And I think that's a really valuable thing to remember.
Yeah.
Alexander's story shows us that history isn't just about learning facts.
Oh.
It's about understanding human nature.
The complexity of it all.
Exactly, and recognizing those complexities in ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked about Alexander's rise, his empire, his lasting impact.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But before we go, let's put ourselves in his shoes for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you're Alexander, standing on the banks of that river in India, faced with that choice to push forward or turn back what's going through your mind. It really makes you think, you know, to be there like standing on the edge of the world with an army that's just done and a vision that even you're starting to doubt.
Right.
What keeps a leader going at that point? Is it ego? Fear? Or was there something more to it, you know? Like, did Alexander really believe he was part of some big divine plan?
That's the thing about history. It's not just about the big events.
Yeah.
It's about the human element, the choices people make and why they make them.
And it makes you think about other leaders throughout history.
Oh, totally.
How much of what they do is for the greater good, and how much is just plain ambition?
Right. It's probably always a bit of both.
Probably.
And, you know, the documentary made a good point about the impact on the everyday people.
Oh, yeah.
We get caught up in the strategies and the battles.
The big picture.
Right. But what about the soldiers? Their families? Those are the stories we don't always hear.
It's easy to forget about them.
Totally. But their sacrifices were real.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just about kings and emperors.
Nope.
It's about all the people impacted by their decisions.
And it's important to try and understand their perspectives, too.
Even if they don't make it into the history books.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about Alexander's rise, his empire, the culture he helped create.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has. But as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this? What makes this guy's story still matter today?
I think it's that history isn't just some boring thing of the past, you know?
Yeah.
It's full of lessons that we can still learn from. Like, we still struggle with the same issues today. Power, ambition, what we leave behind Alexander's story helps us understand all of that.
It's about recognizing that the past is still relevant.
Exactly.
So for anyone listening who wants to learn more about Alexander, where should they go from here?
We'll definitely read more than just documentaries. Dive into those old school sources, you know, Arian, Plutarch.
Yeah.
They offer all these different sometimes even contradictory takes on Alexander.
So it's not just one version of the story.
Right. And don't stop there. Check out Hellenistic art and architecture.
Go to museums.
Yes. See the sculptures trace how Greek influence spread? It's a real tangible way to connect with that cultural legacy.
And hey, if you're feeling really adventurous,
Oh.
retrace Alexander's steps.
Yeah.
You can travel the same route he did, from Greece all the way to India.
Imagine standing where he stood, seeing the places that shaped him.
Wow, that's definitely going on my bucket list.
Mm.
But even if you can't travel right now, there's still so much you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Read a book, visit a local museum, heck, even just start a conversation with someone. There's a whole world waiting to be discovered.
And remember, it's not just about memorizing dates and names. It's about asking questions and challenging what you thought you knew.
Love that. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Alexander the Great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We hope you learned something new and maybe even got inspired to keep exploring history.
It's pretty amazing stuff when you really get into it.
It is.